Amen.
I guess it's going
Amen.
to be an intimate night tonight, right, guys? With just us
It's just us, man, diving deep.
diving
Full
deep
moon.
and being
Full moon
authentic and
eclipse.
sharing some of our history, right, in technology.
And also maybe some perspective, like where can we go, especially concerning what's going on right now. Can tech be used like to improve our conditions?
Right. And how can tech not help us, right? And we have to be aware of those pitfalls where tech can be dangerous, keeping us in a loop, not growing, not doing anything.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So
Yep.
let me confirm that we're live on
Facebook.
And then
The Facebook.
on our website as well.
Mick, I got a question for you.
Oh, yeah, indeed. Ask away.
Can you hear me, Mick?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Wait, I can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Oh, let me see. Let me see.
Your mic, I think when you put on your mic.
Do you hear me now?
Barely. It's like very like faint.
Oh, okay. Let me see. Oh, maybe. Is it an issue with your computer? It doesn't take the.
Huh.
Okay. I can't use the earphones. All right, there we go. Yes.
I
Yeah.
was gonna ask you like technology. Like, what is the etymology of that word? Like, do you know?
Yeah, I do. Actually,
Knowing of tech.
it's a myth. Comes from
Oh.
yeah. So the myth of Techne. She's a weaver. So she's like, I believe it's the myth of the weaver in Greek, who's like also related to the spider.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, the ability to like weave and create a reality. Yeah, it's
So
just really appropriate and kind of a cool connection to other cultural ideas about technology. Uh, Even the Indian, like Maya, right? Maya is also like weaving, right? Something like that.
Mhm. Big time. Yeah, and the mythology, the spider weaving these like like these technologies. Um, I got a question for you on that story, that mythology. That's interesting that it's like that it has the name tech is the name of that mythology, and then also ology, like which is the study of. So technology is the study of weaving, like the mythology of weaving, like interesting.
Yeah, right. And I think it really also brings you back to like how you use your hands, right? Like, or the spider is using those, the extensions or the ability to like weave from the rear end, but like how do you use your extensions to make the world? And so it's like an extension of ourself, the technology, yeah. I mean, what about you guys? What are some associations or things that you've heard about it, like where that comes from?
Um, I for me, technology has always been associated with like with how we use the world around us. You know, like I see that technology has changed over thousands of years. Not just with humans, but animals do technology, right? They like use branches or leaves and do different things, and some of them turn shells into some homes, and so certainly there seems to be technology inherent in the universe, and it's pretty amazing. It's not just human for me.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's a whole thing. I feel like um, a lot of our ideas do come from watching nature and animals and how things are done, and then picking up on it, right? And we've forgotten a lot about that in the modern age, but tribal peoples or people that live closely in contact with nature, they look at see what the bear is eating before they eat, or They look at and see how maybe primates are using tools oftentimes to adapt those, you know. So, uh, or how do snakes move, and or all that stuff.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. What about you, Charlie? What? We can't hear you.
Oops.
Sorry, I was trying to set up the Facebook Live thing. So for me, I've actually had multiple evolution of technology. Um, because I came from specifically going to USC for computer science up in LA,
Oh
and
yeah.
that kind of started my like following technology in kind of what we considered like the modern day technology. That was the day when we were plugging in computers and hearing that noise. You know, that was Indy, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. And so that was kind of like the early days. And for me, I was coming from like that Asian converting to America. So there was like that culture clash. And so medicine wasn't kind of like the place I was going to go because there was a culture clash in my family about medicine. So I wasn't feeling right about it. But technology, seeing the computer, being able to communicate on the computer, that was the beginning of chats. So I thought that was the most amazing thing because I was having conversation with people that like, we didn't know who we were. I was hoping I was having a much more evolved conversation with somebody in the computer. So that was the beginning of, to me, I mean, those people online could be total robots for all I knew, right? And I was communicating with an entity outside of myself. So, to me, it was really interesting when that whole world started to open up and I was able to communicate to someone that was far away. And that was like, because I could not do pen pals. I tried it. I just could not write letters and send snail mail at the time. So this was the beginning of a way to communicate to people. So that was the beginning of my journey, is seeing how much fun the computer gave me that I decided to go learn more about it. And that was kind of like my journey into the technology world. But my evolution of it was, um, I was always interested in the mind, psychology classes, philosophy classes, anthropology classes. So I took a lot of those during school. And what I noticed is, when I took a class that was combining neurology and the brain. So they were putting chips in the brain. They were noticing that neurons would get reformed around these chips and allow the bridging of certain neuron connections, so that it allowed for certain aspect of your brain to start functioning again, so that you can replicate some kind of physical movement that you couldn't do before, or sensation. And I thought that was so brilliant. It was the beginning of me understanding that there's a correlation between computers and the human body. But they don't obviously teach it that way. So I really went into studying firmware, hardware, learning how to build computers from like zeros and ones. I mean, I saw the world in zeros and one, and when you kind of break everything down, and I grew up from Lego. So Legos was my technological toy when I grew up. So to kind of make a long story short, basically a lot of my evolution comes from really searching for who I am and finding the computer world to be this reflection of my own psychology and my own um, physiological body. And so the
Yeah.
technology that I am today is actually being very amazed by how much nature is actually already doing mass communication between different nodes of information. And here we are, like, still trying to figure out who we are so that we can communicate with somebody about our perspective, and getting confused, in the two or three people that hear the conversation. It changes into the telephone game, right? So, I mean, if you think about that, that's a very bad degradation of information. So, it's really interesting how, for me, I come from the very synthetic technical world of technology, which was really a reflection of our own consciousness trying to replicate our brain, and then putting kind of like, you know, replicating their brain, because that's kind of what we believe is where consciousness is, but now we're recognizing something beyond that, which is the quantum. So I really feel like technology, the myth of it is to understand how the world works, and the myth of the world and how it works, and the interconnection of everything that comes together. So so computers really brought me into technology because it brought me back into connecting with other people and myself. And that's kind of
You
like a
know,
very
that's
long.
That's interesting. You brought that up, because for me too, I would say that like I grew up when internet started taking off, and like I'm sure so many people who might hear this, and when they do hear this, a lot of people relate. There's a lot of millennials and younger millennials, like this changed everything for us. Like we literally like, like we were able to communicate with people all around the world in different ways, and wow, like amazing, like it shifted everything.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I really, I mean, I think it's just so interesting to think about the origins of the internet mythologically as well. Like the word internet is your name, Indy, right?
Yeah.
It's Indra. It's the one who weaves all these people
Yep.
together, creates a big net of, all the jewels are on this like web connected, right? I mean,
Yep.
so it's like you keep coming back.
All the multiverses.
Yeah, mythology just keeps on coming back into the origins of uh, all of these technologies that we use. Kind of fascinating.
Yeah,
And
and go
go
ahead.
ahead, Charlie. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, the idea of the interweb is where we are starting to see the evolution of actually our ability as a humans when we're connected. What is it that we can create as a collective, right? And the internet is really supporting us consciously now, where before we weren't able to communicate with anyone across the planet in an instant. Here we are today, connecting, sending anything from videos. I mean, we're doing TikToks. We're sending like 2-second videos across China all day long, all the time, right? Like, it, we're becoming one planet because of this technology. So, I mean, here we are today being on Zoom,
Yep.
which is, on an interweb connection. And
Interweb.
yeah, and we are all, actually not locally connected, right? Because we're all really far apart. Both of you guys from North and Southern California. I'm in Houston, and here we are, not missing a beat. We could have quarantines, we could have um, riots, we could have alien invasion, and we'd still be doing this show trying to tell people the truth about what's going on. You know.
Totally. Totally.
And that
Yeah.
everything is all in our head, and the greatest movie's happening, and we get to choose what type of movie we want.
Yeah. Yeah. We get to tune in how we want to tune in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, which,
Yeah.
which is interesting. Which is interesting because then there's like a little bit of a responsibility, with technology. I feel right. Like there's some sort of like like great power comes great responsibility.
Right. So, I mean, we can talk now about some of the um, pitfalls of technology with a lack of consciousness, because I believe that technology is just a tool, right? And if we're going back to our original conversation of the myth of interconnection, so it's really a myth or a theory, because everybody actually has a different way of connecting, right? Even in astrology, whether you connect with words, whether you connect with emotions, or whether you connect with, the written format, right? Because some people can't speak, and so they have to use the written format or psychic energy. But we are recognizing there are new types of even abilities that people have that have been suppressed all this time, and we are recognizing them in our fiction as like these mythical beings that used to do things. And so maybe we go back to this idea of myth. Why are things considered a myth? Is it because we don't have proof, and we consider them myth? And so what happens if we prove that they were right? Then would it stop being myths and become documentaries or research paper? I mean, when we talk about Zeus, it's plain and simple, he could control electricity. Here we are today. We are in control of Zeus's power. and that's the technology. But to them, we thought they were powers, right? So if you think about it, look at all the powers what we do contain in cities and what we can do today. So the conversation should be, what should we do now with these tools? And are people using them for the right reasons? You know, because if we were to look at where money's going,
Yeah.
I don't think that money is really going into places that helps people, but rather distracts people from who they are. I mean, would you guys like to add to anything about some of the cons? But I think the distraction of too much content is actually detrimental. People are not able to tune out of technology because I think it's like a dopamine addiction at this point, right? Versus in nature, you're able to really reflect and find the inner wisdom. When you're with technology, oh my
Yes.
goodness, we're getting bombarded by so many things that pulls our attention.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of goes back to what I was feeling about like the origins of technology is an extension of self, right? But if you forget to look at what the self is, which is um, constantly changing and at the same time constantly stable, it has both polarities to it, right? If you don't look inside and realize that, then how can you actually properly use technology because you're not realizing it as an extension of those realizations. You're simply, it becomes a shell that's the extension, but all you notice is the extension and you forget the the core, which actually connects to everything else. But
Yeah.
you know, so it's like this interesting thing that we can use technology to connect with everybody, but if we're not aware of our interconnectedness from our in our sensations from our quantum field that we've been given in these bodies, then we can't actually share it in a heart-centered way, you know, kind of coming back to your shirt, Charlie, you know.
I like it that it's also right in the heart chakra where it's like Iron Man type, right? Like Care Bear coming out.
Yeah, it is Care Bear.
Care Bears, I love them.
Care
Um,
Bears.
I also think about like, you know, there's a little bit of like it's fun to kind of think about the mysticism of things, you know, and looking at um and looking at the mysticism of things is like is actually like noticing that like, whoa, what we're holding, like what I'm holding in my hand right now is a black mirror, you know, is a black scry, is a black screen. Like it's a yes. Okay. Is a black screen. So like that's interesting to think. Like we're actually like, you know, like there's a little bit of magic going on here, you know, which is interesting. Like, and that magic, are we aware of what's going on? Do we know who has access to it? Who's accessing the power of it? Are they even aware of it? Are we aware of it?
Yeah, exactly. The Black Mirror. Uh,
Isn't there a show like called that Black Mirror?
Yes,
mhm.
Black Mirror. Do you guys watch
Right?
it?
Of course.
Yeah, the dystopian aspects of technology, and
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Which is which is interesting. Oh, go ahead, Mick. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that it is interesting because we have all these aspects inside of ourselves, right? And so Black Mirror focuses on like what happens with the unexamined and the kind of the violence or the psychotic aspects of the human experience when it gets amplified through technology that we've created, right? What happens, right? Um, and and yeah, I mean, I think with our show, we the whole point is to actually look at those things so that they don't catch you from behind and take over, right? Because the shadow work, like you do, like what Carl Jung talked a lot about doing shadow work and being acknowledging and aware and of it so that it's integrated as opposed to attacking you unconsciously, you know. Yeah, and really coming to
Um,
that awareness so you can actually see all things as this relationship between light and dark as a play, as a dance. Guru, you know, that idea of guru.
Sure. And you know, it's funny, right? Like for me, it's like, like I love that. I love Black Mirror. I think it's a wonderful analysis of, the pitfalls and the dangers in technology and that are actually happening. Actually, some of this stuff is already happening. And, the other aspect of it is like, hey, where's like the heart-centered narrative, right? Like what can technology be in a like super productive, super positive, super supportive way? Like we don't even get that discussion much. And Charlie used to do hackathons and stuff like that, and I've been a part of some of these, or these like corporate kind of things to like make these technologies that way, but they never do that. Like there's never a vision. I don't hear that narrative. I don't see it. I don't see fiction. I don't see like fiction or
Do we need a
TV.
version of White Mirror?
Like White Mirror, yeah. Like where's
Yeah,
the White
yeah,
Mirror?
exactly. And I feel like you know it, it's not just technology as much as we've all been in different industries, and what we learn is that it's not just uh, the industry of technology or games, or it's in medicine too, right? It becomes a money conversation where are we making money from these, like, what happens right now if you want to build any kind of tech is you actually do need funding. And what happens with funding is you need investors, and investors always kind of look for profit. So then you have an angel investors, but then what is an angel investor? And we've done the round of investment from doing the pony show road. You dress up, you look the part, you go and do this like 10 pitch deck, try to get people who have all this money, who made all this money from, I don't know, whatever way they made their money, to hopefully they would see an investment in us helping people. And, a lot of times it's really hard to kind of show that people are valued. And here we are today where we're kind of dealing with a revolution because there's this sense of inequality of value of people, right? And I don't think that it should be just, a black and white thing or whatever race is being portrayed in mainstream media. I think it's a people value thing in general, And so the situation is kind of where we're at because, and we are finding out this because of Twitter. So Twitter is a great communication device that's helped us kind of band together as people and to tweet about what's really going on. But even with Twitter, there's could be issues within that own technology when you have so many people on there. Could you say that you now have power to control and sway the perception of the masses? And this is kind of where we're going now with our current day technology is when we value profits to be above, beyond everything, then does the technology actually suffer, and as well as the community that it's supposed to support, right? And I know that's a systemic problem, and I think for us that's why we're kind of doing this whole green, what is it called, grassroots kind of mentality, right? Because if we were to kind of hope that somebody would believe in us, then we actually are not doing the dream ourselves, right? Which is believing that we get enough people to talk about the important things, we're going to have deeper conversations because people aren't having a conversation.
Well, Charlie, you know what? Interesting you bring that up. I feel like attention is really important. Like, we're learning more about quantum and, we're learning more about like the quantum field and how like what we think about has an effect on the reality around us. And yeah, I know there's some purported like misconception about that, even that, the light experiment that happened, but still there is something about concentration, right? Where we put our mind, our thoughts, and how those things come to be. And so it's like makes you think like people who have a lot of followings, people who like are able to sway public opinion, like I think Thomas Jefferson said it like back in the day. He said like if you have the public trust, then you're public property, right? Meaning that like what he was trying to say was that like if a bunch of people believe in you, right, like or like look up to you, then you have a responsibility to show up to like improve conditions, for your community, right? And to be responsible, right? So like right now you have this huge confluence of people who have such big followings, but they don't really practice responsibility, right, with that. And so it's like this weird thing because they're not elected officials, but they're kind of are elected. Our attention is electing them. Our following them, our adding them, and watching and reading their texts or their posts is electing them.
Right. And this is where that means the consciousness of the people using the tool is where we are getting at, right? This is if we give everybody a token to kind of focus on what attention and want to focus on, this is kind of what we're running into. And so how do we give people a much a more positive way of seeing the world to be more involved, but not, and it's really tough too, because I think, and I don't want to blame just because of the participation awards, but yes, the participation awards and that type of lack of rewarding people for working hard has really dissuaded people from doing a little bit of hard work. I think too many times people want the easy way. Like I want learning the how to vote, and I want to learn how to do that, but make it easy for me. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. That's tough, right? I mean, that's a very tough situation because here I am already. We're all educated people, and we try to read that stuff.
Why can't we just plug it into their brain? Like we can't just plug it.
We're going down to Johnny Mnemonic, and that's a whole other conversation that we could totally
maybe
talk
that's
about.
Maybe that's what those COVID testings that they stick up your nose are. They're like you're like uploading I don't know, school, like accounting, how do you do your taxes?
Maybe that's viruses just clearing hard drive space in your mind so you could be plugged up to use as hard drives. But I mean, yeah, because if we talk about technology, we also have to talk about artificial intelligence within the day, within tonight's show as well. But I don't want to go up into that space yet, because I think there's a lot of positive and negatives to the whole, the tool set, right? The tools that we have.
So let's do this, Charlie. Let's do this thought experiment right now with this, right? Because like I think the bad parts about technology are talked about at length a lot. I'm sure we're gonna have guests over the next few weeks that are gonna speak more from an expert level about their perspective. But I would say for now, like us three, let's plant some seeds in like what is a white mirror? What is a white mirror conditions right now from our perspectives? What are some like white mirror perspectives of like what we could be like? What could the future of tech and presently too be like? In a way that's harmonic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So whoever wants to take that.
Maybe we call it a bright mirror,
Ooh, I like that.
Or clear mirror.
Clear mirror.
I like that.
Crystal mirror. How about crystal mirror?
Then you see past the veil, man. You see the other side.
Exactly.
Or the crystal eye. Ooh. Black eye, black mirror. Ooh, black eye.
Right.
When I did the first time I did San Pedro in the forest, and I was like laying on the ground of the forest at night. We had a fire going on and like all night fire, and I'm looking up looking up at the sky, and I had this amazing psychedelic experience where I saw like a reflective, like I saw a three-dimensional isododecahedron mirror, right? That was like at each of the plates of that isododecahedron were mirrors, but that mirror was like this like really interesting, like it was rainbowish, changing rainbowish, almost like a bubble-ish, like when you make like a a bubble. But it was a mirror. And then I could see myself. I was inside of it, and I could see. And when every one I looked at, I was like a different version of myself. And then eventually I went out of it, and I noticed that when I went out of it, there was like a ton of isododecahedron all over the place. Like I was just one of them. But inside of it, I had all these reflections within. It was really cool.
It's like the eye of the fly, right? Where they have like all those little compound eyes. Or those kaleidoscopes.
Yeah, like a kaleidoscope. Very fractal.
Yeah.
But okay, so I'll plant the seed. If you guys aren't ready yet, you're still writing a note for what is a bright mirror, what is a clear mirror perspective technology right now. I will put this forth. I and I put this forth with great like study and like experience and being involved in a project right now, like as we speak right now, about really upgrading like democracy 2.0, you know, or 3.0 or whatever you want to say, where we are using our ability to using algorithms and AI to to simplify the way that we interact with our community ordinances, like whatever's going on in our community, whatever issues are going on, if anybody's struggling with something mental health wise, food, whatever, or if it's like cleaning up our city, or if it's like, you know, maybe it's fixing our street, there's a pothole in the street, whatever it is, right? These things become super easy to be on a platform, and then citizens can interact with that platform to help improve it. And upon improving and being involved in it, get rewarded. So like there's actually, if, whether it's cryptocurrency or whether it is through actual reward systems based on the city being the provider of those, you know, those bonuses, what happens is it creates this wonderful, like almost like this torus, you know, of this toroid, right? Where like people are adding value into this democracy 2.0 system, and they're also being rewarded by their interactivity, right? So that is what I'm seeing with technology. We're like basically we can vote, we can rate our politicians, our local city halls, council members, police chief. We can rate them in real time. If they interact with us, we can rate them positively. If they don't listen to us, we rate them negatively. And really quickly, we can start to see who is like with the people and who's not. And also, it also gives opportunity for people who may not have jobs, may not have the opportunity to work anymore, or maybe there's no jobs. They have a way to sustain themselves in a system that like also encourages their interactivity with their community.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I was totally imagining a. Do you play Civilizations and those type of games
Oh
where
yeah, I love
great? I mean,
Civilization.
I could see this being a very nicely gamified city where it really reinforces people getting involved in the community, and I think it's very important. I actually think that the idea of us becoming online, one of the things that's getting very difficult is we are not connected to our community, our local communities, because it's so easy to now disassociate from the people around you, but rather find people that are digitally connected to you. Then it's hard because a lot of people, and for me myself, I moved to LA a lot, so I was never in one place for a long time. It was really hard for me to get like I was probably voting for LA as a whole, but I went to different cities in LA. As you guys know, it's a pretty big city, and I could not get involved with my local community. So I often got involved with like major communities that I enjoyed. I did Make-A-Wish and those kind of bigger communities. But in terms of like the local police force, like I moved so often, it was hard for me to kind of, I didn't have that presence. And it could be a place where it's hard for a lot of maybe the millennials, the ones who we do want more involved. Why are they not able to get involved? Maybe because they don't know. They come in, they moved in. There's not like welcome to your new neighborhood. Click here to provide trash can problems or potholes. Please let us know. Like way to go. Oh, please help us maintain the community by and I think we're trying to get there in some places, some communities. There's an app that we use called Neighborhood app here. I don't know if you guys use it, but my sister showed it to me when I moved here.
I think there's also Nextdoor is a popular
Next
one
door.
too.
I'm sorry, what I call it? Neighborhood next door. Yes, next door. So yeah, I mean that's one kind of good start for community development, but
Totally.
we don't know if they're going to want to be involved in politics, and that's a great place. Is the problem is politics has been such a taboo word in so many. You hear people in conversation. Oh, we don't talk politics on the table. We don't talk politics because we don't want to get angry. And maybe like you said, it's conversation of how do we bring up conversation so that it's not so antagonistic, but you allow multiple point of views.
Well, I also think that one of the reasons that people have those barriers to talking about politics is it doesn't start from the ground level. So it's like you to talk about politics, you're talking about something so much outside of your daily experience that it becomes more of an ideological conversation as opposed to, well, like Indy was saying, what are the civic servants around me doing? How do we respond to that? And how do we upgrade our life in this community? And then you start to understand how it's actually a whole chain of connections between obviously the local government and the state and federal governments. They're all connected. But if you don't like follow the chain all the way up, it becomes this big leap, and then it's easy to lose the working parts along the way, and the playing parts, like the joy in it too. Yeah.
Yeah, and the interesting part about that is the tech is actually there. Like, we know Charlie and Mick, like from a software perspective, it's very simple actually, It's not out of the realm of possibility to take the information that we have and convert it and put a skin on it so that, it's user friendly.
So it's really interesting you say that, because I've actually looked into this. I've had many conversations. We've done a lot of hackathons, civil hackathons. And one of the major things, I think it's a pro and a con, right? Because the government believes in stable jobs, and stability of the job created people who manage paperwork, because the government is based on paperwork. As long as there's a paper trail, you are considered legitimate. If you're not, then you're just making shit up, which is fair in a country full of people, selling snake oil. So I totally understand that, and it's very important. But you guys can see kind of like where that's kind of gone a little too far now, where it's been difficult now to kind of get to like the more authentic and truthful conversation more quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then a lot of times too, when people come through, like right now we have primaries, right? But, like how many people talk about the local laws? That's not, I don't think there's a very nice place for that conversation. It's usually like in a town hall, surrounded by like very official things. Can I have like people my age hanging out in a local pub talking about these local, things like that? To me would be a much more.
Can we have it? Can we have it be like connected with like a comedy show beforehand, where like a
Yeah.
comedian comes and jokes about some of the issues?
Right. And I think it's just that topic isn't. I think it's both sides, where people who want to do more civic duty need to integrate civil conversations in their everyday life just as much. But the technology, what's really dangerous is, so now if you say, look, there are 3 people that are, their job is to make sure that paperwork is done. If you have a computer that does that, their job is gone. And then what happens now is, well, can we make sure that no one is going to hack the paperwork that you submitted throughout that process?
No, Charlie, I think a easy hack for that is like what some cities around the country are doing, like Stockton, California. They're giving they're starting to do a basic income, a monthly basic income, and that way having a job isn't the priority anymore for the community. People can survive with this basic income, and then everything else is added from there, right? So how people want to contribute to the community becomes its health.
Yeah.
Because I think right now we have to start, I think we'll have this conversation more with other people, but, certainly technology is already doing it. We're not going to need a lot of the jobs that, have been kind of staples for the past 30, 40, 100 years, We don't need them.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, that's the transition of technology, because now, I believe that there's a lot of technology that can replace a lot of jobs, but maybe we should have a fundamental consciousness conversation is, what do we want humans to be? Right? So we can then reassert ourselves within technology, or technology can fit our evolution. Because right now, it feels like technology is actually a divide between certain people who can do certain jobs, some people who can't, But farming, like, I don't believe that I need any computer skills for that, if I were to do farming. So I think there's kind of like a bigger conversation of, and that's the civil conversation. I think that's a pretty big conversation in general, because your city also might be, you know, more tech. I mean, you are in Silicon Valley. That is a more technologically advanced kind of space in town. I am in Houston. We're more of a medical field, space, and oil. You know, so very
Oh,
different.
Charlie, before I forget, and Mick, I want to get your technology white mirror thing after this. But Charlie, before I forget, can you reach out to your? I got somebody actually messaged me privately. Can you reach out to your chief of police and get his info? Whether maybe you go to your council member for Houston, but your chief of police is a Cuban immigrant, and he recently stood with the people, and
So
like the people really like,
I'm
yeah,
not
the
in
protesters,
Houston.
and so
Like I'm not in
it would be
Houston proper.
it'd be
I live
it'd
like,
be awesome to get his info because I will reach out to him about working with the police, doing some mindfulness, and maybe you can go and do some stuff there.
Ooh, cool.
sure.
Um, you could do some astrology with the with the cops. Um, uh,
Beautiful.
but yeah, Mick. What's your idea? What's your like? What is your white mirror?
Well, I'm gonna call it crystal mirror or rainbow mirror or bright mirror. I like going with your story of the rainbow mirror. That's cool. Um, I mean, for me, it's obviously not going to be one thing, but I've experienced it a lot, honestly, during our lockdown, pointing in the direction that I think is really important as a tool for awakening people's innate creativity, because I feel like there a lot of the students that I've had over the past couple of months on Zoom have actually reached out to me or to people that have been kind of managing the Zoom classes, and told us that it's really opened up something that they buried as children, to be able to access their creativity through these online classes and not have to like travel to some place where it feels maybe exclusive, or they feel like this intimidation, like this is only for artists or creative people to come into this gallery or into this workshop space, but really just to go from the comfort of their homes and learn techniques or get provocations to awaken the creative spark within them. And I truly believe that every single living being has immense creativity within it, right? And to me, the whole planet is a living being, right? So it's just like to kind of, I think it's one of the greatest tragedies that people forget that they're creative beings, and so to be able to use technology to awaken that in a way that's not threatening is huge. And so, Zoom classes, great, that's a good start, but there can be apps that do that, of course, but ultimately I think it's uh, humans are the most potent at activating that for other humans, right? So creating more forums for us to awaken each other, I think that's where I see the bright mirror or the rainbow mirror happening. um, yeah.
Sure, Mick. I even wonder what you're talking about, and wonder like how eventually as it becomes more ubiquitous, and maybe we figure out the technology so more people can have it, is like VR, right? Is like we can meet each other in VR art studios and VR art spaces, and who knows what we can create in virtual reality. Charlie has experience developing VR virtual reality games and experiences, and when you're in that space, I've been in that. I've done some painting stuff in VR. I didn't want to get out. Like I was like, this is amazing. I'm not a painter, and I was like, I'm loving this. I was like doing all kinds of cool stuff in 3 dimensions within a space which is outside of the physical space, and like that was amazing, And I can certainly see people who are not even creative per se. When a lot of people say we're not creative, they'll definitely be creative in that space because it ignites their third eye.
Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, VR is an amazing way to do it, and also like helping people access meditative techniques, just like you're talking about, like that's a huge thing. And I've seen some beautiful VR projects that actually do help activate your chakras and open the third eye, and guided meditations, or using the breath. That actually, I sent you guys the link of a VR experience, which actually is measuring your breath, and that helps you move through the space. And then it's amazing to me how something like that can actually affect your whole life. afterwards, you know. And it can be as simple as learning how to draw something in front of you is like the first VR, really, you know. And when you go into VR, it's just another layer of that, like, ability to realize how our perceptions are malleable, you know. That it's not just one way, you know.
The
So
Yeah, the virtual reality gets us closer to that whole holodeck experience where we're able to create hypothetical simulations for ourselves to deal with things, you know, like now you could really practice doing things like, you know, if you're scared to practice in front of people, maybe you could have a simulation like put random strangers in a room and you have to practice your speech, you know?
Dude, Charlie, one of my friends in the VR space just premiered an experience for people to experience what it feels like to be a Black employee, like getting hired on the job for the first time. You're in the eyes of the Black employee walking around doing your job, you know,
Yeah.
at a store. And so, like, and he just won an award for that because it's like empathy training, right? Like, so that if somebody white can experience that, they're like, whoa, you know?
Yeah. And what's really great about virtual reality is it's actually putting you closer. So a lot of gamers have been able to experience this because we played a lot of games that put us, and we're very close to being in virtual reality when we play these third world, you know, first person shooters where you feel like you're the character. And now that you're in VR, you're really immersed in the experience. But what's been really great is people that play video games really understand the idea of um, multiple realities and multiple consciousness and the idea of past lives. I really feel like people really understood the idea that past life is more like playing a whole bunch of video games. And every time you play that video game, you become that character. And that character is the archetype. And how you play that game is who you are. So you have a character you're playing right now, and how you play yourself is actually the most important conversation about reality and spirituality. So I think what's great about where video games have really gone is it allows us to simulate a hypothetical questions about a conversation of what if this character, Black Mirror, went bad, right? Like, what if technology goes bad? Would we be able to kind of fix it, right? And that's kind of what these games are. Is it gives us abilities to learn that. So I love the idea that, you know, where games have taken it. I think it's gotten a little bit too far and too technical, and so VR brings back the intuitive player, because just like how iOS games brought back a lot of regular casual players, is what we say. You know, you now are seeing virtual reality bring back casual players, because what it used to be really difficult to do, which is move around and shoot around, now you naturally know how to shoot a gun in virtual reality, right? So it doesn't need you to learn a controller to learn how to shoot around in virtual reality. So
So
the,
Charlie, what's you know, I'm gonna plant the seed that like I feel like your white mirror, rainbow mirror, like clear mirror, is like you already started work on something that's kind of like that, you know, with the astrology VR game, or you know, creating an RPG kind of, you know, experience for, you know, learning about the history of the humanity, but also like learning how to become a better version of yourself. You know, I would love for you to share that, and if that is your like white mirror, but I think that's
yeah,
important to like talk about that, like bro, like we're talking about legendary stuff. And I think, you know, the thing is, right, is like like there's a lot of games like you were just saying, and you go on Twitch, a lot of the games are violent, or like kind of like they hold space for a lot of violence, right? And you know, us versus them kind of mentality. Now, like for me, my favorite experience about life, like when I upgraded my life, was when I realized my life as a game, when I treated my life like a game. You know, I treated my relationships, my opportunities, situation, negative or positive. I was like, this is a part of the game. And it really helped, you know, allow me to be more resilient. So yeah, share, Charlie, please.
yeah, thank you. So my experience as Disney, I was a game producer, and through that experience, I really switched around the way I saw the world. And so this whole idea of technology, right, is does technology control us, or are you the master that built the technology and now you control the technology? And that's kind of where being a video game player was very different for until I became a video game creator. That's when you have to start creating skills and characters, but now you have to create dark characters that are going to become the antagonists of your world. So you start to appreciate your dark characters. And then you start to appreciate all the little things in the world that you have to make to, to really sell the experience that you're doing. So um, when I left Disney, I was really looking for a spiritual experience to really make what I was doing have more spiritual essence in them. Just because, working at Disney, it's again that corporate structure of profit. So, for me, it's like, how can I really play with spirituality, but not give it a religious perspective? Because I think too many times religion kind of wants to monopolize the conversation of spirituality. And coming from making games for Disney, you start making a lot of children's games, right? So it's a lot for the everyday user. So when I left, I got into VR, and I really thought about what is it that I wanted to make. And I had just got into astrology, and I was getting really excited about the idea that astrology was really an empowerment tool to teach you about who you are. And I grew up loving comic book, Marvel and DC comic book cards and the comic books and seeing the superheroes. But then I got the comic book cards, and I love their cards, and being able to really, as a Virgo, I love analyzing things, and I would analyze and learn about.
Just to let everybody know that like Marvel cards and like the comic cards, like on one side was really amazing art of the character, whether it was Iron Man or whatever the heck. There's like villains and good guys and bad guys, people in the middle. So one side was like amazing art, and the other side kind of gave you this like really cool like perspective of like, okay, like what is their strength, like their power levels, what is their like magic levels, right? What is their like healing level, right? So like everybody had like this criteria. All the characters they had different ranges for those criteria, and then they had like these special secret facts about them, right? Like where they were born, obviously natural stuff, where they were born, where they're from, all that jazz, secret name, whatever. And then underneath it was also like a secret fact or secret skill or secret something, right? These special abilities that they had.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed just kind of breaking that whole process down into astrology, where I actually saw astrology charts like comic cards for people. And so I kind of developed with a part of mine, we built this virtual reality astrology game where we kind of immerse people into astrology a little bit more. And before I left, it was kind of like the pinnacle of like the end of the project was when we had this great astrologer come in. You guys know Leo King. He's David Palmer he used to be in Los Angeles, an actor in Los Angeles, and went to Orange County. He's a very famous astrologer over in OC. And let me kind of share. We asked him to come over and do a experience our astrology virtual reality game. And he did. And he actually brought his green screen. We did a little bit of a show. And it was super exciting to have like a real astrologer look at what I built and see kind of what was it that he was going to connect to, and whether or not, I was even close in my astrology kind of understanding. Because this was really, I had to really learn astrology from the depth. And this really kind of brought me into what I do today, is really do astrology charts on the side with people. But this was the beginning of really digging deeper on this tool and figuring out how do we bring out this tool to really empower people to understand how powerful they were, right?
And I like the idea of like gamifying it, like allowing people to see their life like RPG, like they can see that they have skills. Like if you're low and if your energy levels are low, then maybe your healing levels are higher. Or like if you're not as quick, maybe you're strong, and that's like it's like understanding your weaknesses and your strengths. I think that's important.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm gonna kind of run through this because I'll put a link to this clip for you guys to watch later. I just kind of want to go through some of it so you guys can kind of see. But this is Leo King right here, and he's putting
about to enter the world, everyone, and you got to be part of.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty funny. He turned into Wolverine. Look at that. He splits his hair. So this is what he sees in the VR headset right here, you guys. It's the zodiac belt that he sees.
Hey, Mick, you see constellation.
So he's looking at
Mick just did a workshop, an art meditation play shop in Spanish and they made constellations, like their own
Oh,
constellations.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, constellation is so beautiful. So in this game, there's a story, and some of us, you guys will recognize, but this is a very much an Atlantean story of like 12,000 years ago, the Earth blew up, and that's kind of where the story starts, and really brings a whole conversation of astrology. We'll kind of skip past the story. We get here to where we get to the birthday. So this is a giant. If you guys imagine Vanna White, those giant letters, right, in Wheel
Yeah.
of Fortune, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is where you put your birthday here.
Wheel of Fortune is like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
another way of seeing astrology, right?
exactly. And then we had to we had to build an ephemeris, like write all the dates. So here we go. We're inside of this. We call it like a zodiac clock. And if you look at this, and if you listen to him, he's really good at
This is
it.
the natal chart literally in 360 degrees. So let's start with me first. I'm a Leo. And if you guys notice, when we look at the planets, I was born with the sun in Leo, okay? And I was born with the planet Mercury in Leo. So you can see that right there. And I was born with planet Venus in Leo. What's really cool about Star Kingdom is you can really be 100% and point to the planets and know about them. So see, when you actually look below, you can read the Libra sun sign personality. You can read about it's the planet in that sign and actually see it. And you can teleport anywhere you want in the world. So if I want to go to the Taurus house in my chart, I can literally teleport here, push this, and it's really like being in a museum of your own astrology. So now I'm going to play the actual game, guys.
Yeah, I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to see their chart in 3D. And that's kind of the beginning of that conversation. So now he goes into each of so sun sign in Leo, right? So he actually has to go into the sun and unlock the sun in Leo. So this is
So look at this, guys. I'm able to throw stuff at the bad fog. They make you forget about your power and your spirituality, which is subconscious or unconscious energy or whatever you would like to call it. But see how there's positive affirmations like loyal, creative. And these actually go with the sun sign that you're at. Because what you're trying to do is see how the fog got your sun over there? Do you guys see that? See the bad guy on the sun? Screw you! You see that? What you gotta do is kill all the fog and all of your subconscious stuff that's implanted in your brain or your soul subconscious stuff. But it's not easy. It takes work, right? Your addictions, your negative thoughts. But if you blast them with your remembering why you're a Leo, for me I'm a Leo, so I'm passionate. Right? And what else am I? I don't know. Hold on. I got to get this one. Come on. Cheer me on. Everybody cheer me on. I got it. Come on. Come on. Come on. Oh, bro. Come on.
literally got everybody to
Oh, I
cheer.
got it. Come on. Well, what am I?
This was such a nice, like, you know, even Gar, he's
And watch this. You guys want to know the best part? This sun's illuminated now and the bad guy's gone.
So I have it where you have to literally illuminate and literally practice your astrology in your, I guess, museum of your astrology in VR. So I'm really trying to build that affirmation, learning your chart, making it fun because it's 3D. And so you literally will see the stars in 3D and really start connecting when next time you go out camping or you're out in nature, you'll look up and you'll recognize, hey, that looks like Scorpio. Scorpio is such a common one. I use that one all the time because when people see it, they're like, I can't unsee Scorpio anymore. It's so easy to recognize that star. So that's a very fun one to do. And, you know, what was really important is for me to bring back the guidance of the stars in astrology. Because if you look at astrology, it looks like a whole bunch of data points. It looks like a crazy graph, right? But looking at the just glyphs, you're like, oh, what does that mean? But back in the days, we used to do this by going outside, counting the stars, measuring things, you know, and after like 2 hours of your like hard-earned like geometry lessons, you could figure out maybe where half of your planets are. And that was what astrology was, you know, how it was done back in the days. So that's why you had these Oracle of Delphi. So here we are, you know, 6,000 years later in technology, we have a computer that runs our chart in an instant, tells us everything we need to know, and then you have someone that reads it. So I wanted to kind of make it funner to look at your chart, because right now you have to go through someone else to look at your chart, right? If you don't know anything about it, or spend days and days learning it.
Well, by the way, when you do give up your power like that, that's very, you know, when you hope to have somebody else tell you about your truth, there's a high probability that, you know, somebody might tell you something based on their, whatever their lens is, right? Their perspective. So you're not getting your truth. You're getting your truth through their lens. So maybe they can hijack your like attention, or maybe they might make you feel like you need them, which, you know, is
Exactly.
interesting.
Exactly. So that's why, like, you know, the games are it was very simple. Like, it wasn't a complicated game. It was literally like you have to physically toss these fireballs, right? Because your element is a fire energy. And I wanted I was basically connecting physical movement of habits with visual recognition and adding some lessons in it, so that you were physically entertaining yourself with your astrology, so they didn't feel like it was such a difficult thing to do. And that was the goal, is how do I use technology to get to the spiritual conversation much quicker? So if I can help you know your chart, you will act out according to who you were meant to be. You're reading your script. When I look at your chart, it's like your movie script. You're this actor and this character in the X-Men mutant. And you do, let's say you're very fast and psychic, and you know, you can move things with your mind. So why do you lift weights all day long trying to get muscles? You know, that's something that happens where we can recognize in astrology. I'm like, do you work out a lot? Yeah. Do you go anywhere? No. That's because you're not supposed to be buff. You're supposed to be fast, you know, or you're supposed to be really smart. You know, and when people recognize that, they can lean into it. And really what happened is you trust yourself to be who you are, and no one can tell you otherwise. And what happened is these X-Men like abilities show up because you are going beyond, like, you're not afraid of being yourself and accepting who you are. And that's kind of what astrology helps us become, is we become kind of like meta humans, because it's like we are trusting to be ourselves. And that is more in line with this divine spark that we talk about in the God source, creator source.
So really quick though, Mick, when do you have to go? I know you have a
It's relatively resolvable at this point. I already called, so
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I want to keep the conversation moving in the sense of, like, you know, we talked about, now we have like 3 different perspectives of a clear white rainbow mirror, right? For technology. At the same time, I also feel like, you know, like what I want to like share, and I want to get your guys' input on like why we're spending this next month, why this month of June, on bringing heart into technology, right? Like, because like, what is heart? Like, what does that even mean, bringing heart into technology? What does technology, like, is it not working in with the heart right now? Like, what is it working with, you know, like, what's going on?
Yeah, Charlie, you want to start since you have the shirt?
Yeah, I think going back to that conversation earlier is really the value of the heart, is the conversation, right? So when we're talking about profit, it's lining the pockets, the physical needs. But, you know, in the end of the day, the heart doesn't take all that money and do something with it. The heart really, when you think about it, when you talk about it, it's the emotional connection. I heard this amazing thing. Emotion is energy in motion. And so the heart is the engine of the energy, right? Because why do you get up every morning? Why would you get up every morning? And when you get up, that's your heart. That's your heart that says, I want to do something, right? Because if you woke up and you have nothing to do today, maybe you just stay asleep, right? But this idea that you get excited. And so your heart, I believe, is kind of where a lot of your passion and desires to be creative comes out. So if we could harness this creative power in our heart, then wouldn't we get closer to the conversation of abundance? Because abundance really says that we're abundant of everything, but yet we live in scarcity, right? And scarcity means we're going to run out of something. But when you're living from your heart in a creative space, nothing can keep you from doing what you want to do, right? Because it's almost a creative space is beyond physical means, right? So this idea that you need love, it doesn't mean that you need physical things, but maybe a hug, right? Even if it's physical, but a hug goes beyond, because now I can remember a hug from a friend, and every time I remember you, I remember that hug, right? And it goes beyond time and space. And so if anything, going through a really hard day, I'm not going to pull a technical piece of equipment, but maybe, a picture of my friend, of my girlfriend, of my mom or my dad will really help me connect, right? And that's the heart that connects each of us together. And so some of the technology that we talked about earlier is this technology of connecting people together, right? And so it is hearts connecting together. And so a lot of the parts that's important in technology is making sure that us, and when I say our heart, is really our spiritual energies fulfilled, right? Is it important that you talk to somebody with really good internet, or that you actually are able to talk to them, right? Sometimes we get too caught up like, well, I want to be able to talk to somebody in 2 seconds. Well, back in the days, we used to take like a minute before the modem would connect before we could talk to someone, And if someone tried to call you, you would get disconnected. So our level of frustration where we've gone. But in the end of the day, our heart is so happy by being able to make that connection. So to me, what's really important is, when does the person who is happy become the most important direction of why we build technology? And that's the big conversation is, you can build stuff, but if it doesn't make my heart happy, why would I build it, right? And that's where I feel like there's a lot of tools that helps me eat, that helps me talk to people, but there's not a lot of tools, that brings me my heart back to myself, allows me to connect back to who I am as a person, so I make better decisions in my life. There's not a lot of support in helping me figure out who I am, figuring out how to talk to my family, figure out how to talk to my community, right? So, in that sense, that's hard, right? Civil service, that should be hard, because the people in your community, in the end of the day, when everything falls apart in the government, let's say we go through post-apocalyptic situation, guess what? The people in our community are the people that are going to be there with us through this whatever bad scenario, right? So in a way, that's hard too. So, I want us to remember that when we remove the heart space from technology, it's kind of like saying the spirit is gone, and you're not just building a tool for tool's sake, right? Not to provide a more fulfilling experience for us as human beings, right? So, and that's kind of what we can get into the conversation AI, right? Is make sure that AI has a heart, and a heart means passion for a mission, and it has to have a connection.
Yeah, ultimately, like, we have to understand that, like, a computer or a robot or whatever, artificial intelligence, is not going to do anything that we don't program it to do. Like, it's, at the end of the day, we're the one planting the seeds of information.
I believe in AI is just like a child. A child is born pure heart, right? And based on the experience they empower themselves with. So if a child never sees what a hug looks like, what love looks like, they will be programmed with those same negative dark thoughts that we believe that AI would also be programmed with. So I believe that, if we can't find heart for each other as human beings, we're already at a disadvantage in recognizing that there's a lack of heart in artificial intelligence and the technology we build. So, this is kind of like maybe we need to turn off technology to recognize our heart space first. And when we do find a heart space, to then make sure that technology supports that while we support our everyday life, right? And that's kind of one way of describing how to make sure there's heart in technology, at least from my point of view.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. I think for me also, when we talk about the heart, I think of the heart as this extension of all the water on the planet, you know, and so how, I mean, I get excited about technology being more organic, more when it becomes more biological in a way. And I mean, that's where we're copying our biology and our brains and all that with the silicon-based technology. But when we do tap into the networks that exist in the mycelium and the networks between all the microbes and the communication that happens and the information that's exchanged already on so many levels on a biological level, uh, or in the biological realm, I think those experiences, the very embodied experiences, are actually multidimensional experiences when we really go deeply into an embodied experience. And so then when does technology then become more of a place of encountering that continuum that's already there, um, like I was saying, that kind of extension of self. So seeing that each heartbeat is uh, tapped into pulses of um, energy that flow through your body, and how those pulses of energy are tapped into um, the way that you, of course, you're breathing, and all of the microbes that come in and out of your mouth and come into your body, and that connects to every other human being that's on this planet, and every other living being. So then it's like it's it becomes this sort of infinite field of loving embrace, you know, from the heart, which kind of takes in all of the gases, right? All of the oxygen and carbon dioxide is going through and getting processed through the circulatory system and out into the world through all of our other systems, right? The skin, the lungs. Um, yeah. So for me, it's like, well, there's a term that comes up a lot in the art world is post-humanism, you know, and this kind of idea that being heart-centered is actually understanding that it's loving to all forms of life, right? And having that kind of relationship of respect. And so I guess I feel like we're 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 inquiring into the intelligence of the universe through the creation of digital technologies at this point. You know, it's another way of having a way of an entry point of inquiry that's going to eventually kind of like loop back to us again, you know. So
Awesome. Oh man, I love that. You set me up perfectly. I love I love when you said about water, like, you know, and the water aspect. And for me, you know, water is really fascinating because it is a technology. Like, you know, if you think about water, it's an anomaly, right? Like it floats when it should sink, you know, and it's the only element that does that, you know, and it carries information, you know, like we know how we have like hard drives and we do all this stuff to hold information. We have these data cloud storage now, right? But like water is stores information. Like what? Like we are literally a sack of water that's constantly exchanging information using water and using non-polar and polar like interactions of our cells and all kinds of shit, right? It's crazy what's happening. It's amazing. It's all water based, you know? And so um that being said, water's dope. And it's an anomaly. And just letting people know, even scientists can't really figure out why water does what it does. Which is interesting. Um that being said, for me, heart-centered technology is really like you know, first I would like to, you know, give my interpretation of like heart-centered, right? Like, you know, I look at the body, I look at everything in this universe kind of like in a magnetic point of view, like looking at magnetics. And I love magnets, and I mean, we wouldn't even be able to be on Earth without a magnetic field, you know, otherwise the sun would be blasting us and we'd be gone in a second. So a magnetic field is protecting us. There's magnetic fields around trees. We have magnetic fields. They've now found that we have peripersonal space, which is like an aura, but it's like the factual, like the scientific term is called peripersonal space, and which is a magnetic field, you know, that's around us. So when we look at magnets, there's a north and south pole, right? Always, right? We have a north south pole for the the Earth, right? A north south pole for everything. And a human body has a north and south pole, right? So I guess you can look at our spine like the magnet, and like the top of that spine is our head, where we take in information, we take in food and information from the top, and then it goes in and it comes out the bottom. And then when it comes out the bottom, it repurposes itself, recycles, and then we end up eating and bringing in information again. And so you have this amazing magnetic field that we're participating in. And if you look at any magnet, though, there's a north and south pole. There's like negative and positive energy. We're not talking about negative energy. We're talking about like just like the polarity of energy, right? Negative, positive. What's in the middle? Like the middle is like I guess the middle is what is it called? The vestige point? Like, or no, what's the right word on point? It's like, like the center of the solar system is the sun, right? And the center of the galaxy is the Milky Way galaxy. There's something in the center. There's some energetic force within the center that creates the possibility, right? So we call it life, but like certainly the heart is beating, and like when it turns off and it turns on, there's some electrical force that's there. Like what? Where is it coming from? It's fascinating, right? So for me, heart-centered technology is coming from a place like accessing and doing technology from that middle space, right? From like not being too high up into your mind and using too much of your higher facilities, or not using your lower facilities, right? Because we see a technology, the overuse of like there's porn is like the number one thing that people use technology for. And so you see how the bottom or food, right? Like when people are not eating well or whatever, they're like really a lot of food issues with technology too. So like lower thing and upper, and people being in their mind, right? We have all these tech companies, we have these amazing innovations and tech companies, but they're all like cerebral. They're not really solving problems in their community. They're not really connected to understanding the whole spectrum. They're like really focused up here. So like for me, heart center technology is coming, like accessing that information and those tools from this middle space. And then that way you're using both your cerebral and your lower facilities, but they're balanced, right? So they're balancing each other. Just like a magnet, when you like play around with a magnet and you get the center of a magnet, it's almost like you're zero gravity, like you're floating, in that space, rather than like being pulled up or down or north or south or whatever. So that's my perspective.
I love that.
It's funny. You're just we're just talking about the heart, and that's actually what I'm studying this week for physiology for school. And they talk about how there's a like electrical current that comes from the heart, and they just talk about how it just spontaneously just triggers the heart. That is about it for how much they study the heart, and that's it. They don't even try to explain where this spark of electricity comes from that actually gets the beat going, right? And then we've studied stuff like heart math. You've heard of heart math, right? The whole idea that within a split second, your body will actually recognize what's going to happen to you before it happens. And then your brain will actually recognize it afterwards. And so what happened is your heart knows already what's happening to you. It's almost like when we talk about our auric field. And so the heart then will like kind of skip a beat, right? Because it knows what's going on. And then our logical brain has to actually process all the inputs and go, I cannot compute, my head's broken. Or it's like, oh my God, something's happening. I recognize it. And that's really, really interesting to see. So, when we talk about heart, the heart is still a very powerful, beautiful space that we still spiritually, physically, mentally, we still are trying to figure out. So I think even if we just literally mentally looked at studying the heart further, I think there's great wisdom within that as well. That's if we were to take it literal and talk about technology for the heart itself, which we can go to medical field and talk about how to help and improve circulation and heart disease, which is one of the biggest killers of this country, maybe second to COVID-19. So, we can totally talk about how the heart actually is not being paid attention to in our life, right? We talk about stress. Stress is actually, our heart gets triggered when we go through stress. So, I think the heart in general is in the medical field is not really looked at more formally. So maybe there's a way to connect technology, meditation, and being able to actually calm the heart to the point where the beats slow down, right? That should be improved and brought into the science. So I think it's just really getting people to have a deeper conversation about everything rather than, I think in Western society, we like to segregate everything so everybody is the king of their little island, right? What if we brought everything back, right? The whole idea of holistic medicine is whole. Let's bring us back whole and trying to solve all the problems. But it does start at the heart, actually. And so it's in technology. If we look at a piece of technology, that may mesmerize our eyes, because we know we can see some really cool pitch decks and you're like, wow, that was a sexy pitch deck. And then you go into your heart, you're like, no, it doesn't help anyone, And that could be a conversation where, how do we let the heart actually make some of those decisions before companies are pushed forward, right? So maybe we see a company that's like all heart, but maybe they're a little unstructured. Maybe that's where, a heart goes, yes, let's help them create more structure about how to help, help the heart make decisions now. Because I think if we tuned in more into a heart and how a heart would decide what is good for us, maybe we would actually create better technology because of the whims of our heart rather than the logic behind the brain, right? And maybe you said more like, based on elimination, we're going to eliminate these ideas rather than my heart feels like this, even though it doesn't make any sense. And I'm sure inventors had those great, like, my heart said to do this, but like in my head, you don't understand it. And that's how discoveries are made, right? Because the discovery didn't happen in the head. Otherwise, it would have made sense and it would have figured it out. But a lot of times I feel like the heart is where a lot of these ideas really push us to keep working hard and solving an idea.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about how, like, even the term inspiration, it's coming from that, like the spark in the heart, or the spark that coming from the lungs, and in that kind of central part of us, that knowledge that comes, that then you have to kind of decipher later, right, through the mind, to kind of pull the juice, like translate that juice into the world, translate that feeling into the world through a kind of concentrated focus. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I had a question for you guys. What are some techniques that we want to put out into the world to help technology be heart-centered? Because I mean, I feel like we are suggesting that with the Cosmic Labyrinth and through the Cosmic Lab, but really having, even like, what are some toolboxes or techniques that are simple, that can really help people make those realizations from the heart before they start to approach any tech project, or like, I kind of, that's one vision that I have, is like, when people develop projects or big ideas as teams, how do they do that? How do they center their motivation in the heart?
I mean, definitely a heart meditation to clear the mind, tune into the heart space before they start, and let whatever feeling comes through. I think just that, I've learned to just put my hand on my heart, and I become very conscious of how the heart is beating or feeling. So the idea of even inspire, you have to take a breath in. Sometimes we're forced to go, what do you think we should do? Well, I think we should do that. And then we're so quick to jump versus maybe like, I'll take a deep breath before we make a decision. Maybe we think about, will that help me? Will that help my family? Will that help the community? And maybe we think from that perspective rather than, will this make us money? Or will this will this do well because you have an audience or you don't have an audience? A lot of times we like to think that we need an audience before we build a tool, which I believe is true. But a lot of times they try to get us to find the audience first before you make a tool, and you have to service that audience, right? Um, but maybe there's a place in like, I do this because I want to help people, and I notice there's enough people that need this help, and maybe coming from that space is a lot more open-hearted than I want to make a cool idea that makes money.
Mm-hmm.
How many ideas will you kind of fall flat before you find something? And maybe, the ideas that have heart are the ideas that keep getting back up when they fall, right? So maybe, the idea of all these great stories is finding out, which story had a stronger, that's kind of what we say, like with this tech, it's like, oh, that tech meant to do greater things for people. And so no matter how many failures they hit, they still believe that they could do something right for the people, right? Right for the people they're servicing, whatever that group is. I believe that all tech should be servicing a group of people. Otherwise, and that's just me being a little bit more of a Virgo, and I like to have, when you build stuff, it should have more purpose, because there's more heart. Because then you can say you can build things but that's why like children play and don't necessarily want to build anything to do anything, right? But from that creation, maybe they solve a problem, and that's kind of the beauty in that.
But there's still, I think, even going back to like the order of kind of importance in how you approach a problem or a question is like, I believe it's Simic is the thinker who talks about this idea of starting from the why, right? So you start from the why, then you move out to the how, then you move out to the what. And a lot of times in the tech world, they start with the what or the how, and the why is sometimes not even acknowledged or is unconscious. And like you said, it's sometimes just to make money, or something very shallow, and but I think that's kind of what we're getting at with the heart centered, is like, where's the why? The why needs to be coming out of the heart, radiating out from the heart. That why is guiding you, and then you can, the other layers might change as you move. So if you know that your heart is in the right place and you are doing, you really want to help people, or you really want, if you're a kid and you're playing because the why is to create and explore and to learn through by doing and playing, then it's in the right place. It's going to lead you to great discoveries in your process, right? Even if the how and the what change along the way, right? So maybe the product, you thought you were going to make a new AI, but you end up making something that that actually is like a forum for communities to discuss problems, and that's the true AI because the community figures it out, or something like that, right?
Yeah. It's really funny. There was a show, Silicon Valley, that showed up on HBO that's been going on, ended the seasons, but it's been going on for 7 years. And we are having the exact same conversation that the show kind of brought up in the first season. It was basically a brilliant kid who, and I say kid because they're very young, and they kind of portray the whole idea that these engineers are just really young, nerd characters, awkward, socially awkward. But he built a great tool. He built a great algorithm that could compress data, and it was a very technologically what situation, right? Which he says a great tool. And then throughout the first season is, what do you want this tool to be that makes an impact? Because you just have a really good compression algorithm, which could speed up how you download things, right? So in the world of things that are moving at a second speed and you want it to move at half a second speed, how many of us will really recognize that difference, right? Versus you can download a whole movie, 6 gigs in like 2 seconds. Okay, now we're having a conversation, but how many of us really need to download 6 gigs in 2 seconds? What was really difficult for the first season, but its heart was there, is he's like, I want to do good. I want to do good and not have a tech guy who has no heart tell me what to do with my technology, because I want my technology to not be tainted by corporate structure, and so I'm going to do this. And so the whole conversation of the show is he's got this beautiful tech that everybody thinks is amazing, and the whole time it's, what are you going to do with it? That
Yeah,
people don't care.
and also, you know, let's even talk. Let's go back and think about like the internet itself. Like, what was its conception? What was the reason behind it? Like, what was the essence? And then we think like, look what it is. Like, it's an incredible innovation, but it actually stemmed from very altruistic, altruistic like origins. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. So, we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing with that tool, right?
Like, what are we doing? But also, like, what other things can we make if we're completely altruistic? Like, when we're making something and we're coming from a place of altruism, what can come from it? We don't even know. Like, the internet, they didn't think, like, with Mick, wasn't it a bunch of scientists?
Yeah, the first internet message was actually sent between, I believe, well, UCLA for sure, because I visited the site at UCLA, and Stanford, I believe, and they didn't even get through the whole thing. It was they were trying to write a longer word, but they only got LO sent, and so it was like kind of interpreted as like lo and behold. Yeah, and it was just, yeah, the scientists trying it out between the two universities. Um, yeah,
And it
And
started
then,
with the why, right? How to communicate between people. That's heart-centered, because you just needed to communicate with people from far away.
yeah, exactly.
and
Yeah,
it
no,
wasn't like, oh, like, how are we going to scale this? How are we going to make money? How is this going to be a sustainable business? Like, there was none of that was going on with that, you know?
exactly.
Yeah. And so we learn in technology, the iteration process, right, is you need to have a why that will carry you through all the problems, right? Because, I mean, the worst is saying, I want to solve this problem, and find out that it's like saying, I want to solve the problem of after eating, your hands are dirty. Well, you kind of made the napkin for that. So, but it's almost like sometimes you have people who may not recognize that there are solutions out there, and maybe it's how do we improve on the solution. And that's where I feel like patents sometimes can be very actually dangerous for us, because it also means that innovation will always be 7 years speed, right? Because it takes 7 years for someone to allow you to then play with your patent and improve on the design. So technologically, we're always 7 years behind the new technology, unless we were like ants. And as soon as someone has created something cool, give it to everybody else, and everybody will improve on that. Suddenly, the one item you thought was great, within a year could be improved by a whole collective, and everyone's using it very quickly, versus I got to make this for 7 years before someone then can which what happens, right? We have, I don't know, computers now built in China, and suddenly everyone can build computers now, you know? So versus before, when you built this in America, you had 7 years of patents. And so, which I understand the whole copyright conversation too, and, losing out on the invention that you create. But, I think that we need to find a balance, right? Where there's heart, so that all of us can improve our lives, rather than just, I made something that makes a ton of money kind of technology and innovation.
Yeah, and I mean, I think even the concept of the improving of life has to be questioned when we do this, right? Because I think, like, in our society, people in a kind of modern, especially kind of Western society, people think about life improvement still in very materialistic terms, and it's changing, luckily. But life improving life also means improving environmental conditions around you, and hopefully around the whole world, and maintaining a good life, like pulse for the whole planet, for every living being that we share this space with, right? And not just like the accumulation of wealth, or like, having a lot of distractions at your fingertips, you know, these kinds of things.
Wait,
But,
Mick, you're saying we shouldn't make an internet for cats?
that sounds like a great idea. A purring internet. I love that.
Maybe they do when they take their cat naps. How do you not know they're going through the cat internet?
Catternet.
Called the internet.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked about it before, right? The mycelium network is the first internet. It's very, very tangible. There's a lot of research being done on it. The way that electrical signals are being sent from mycelium miles away from another mycelium network, and they're all connected, sending these electrical pulses, right? So
it's all at the end of the day, everybody's copying everybody. There's biomimicry, whether we're subconsciously or consciously. There's nothing original, you know, like everything is being shared and copied.
They were just remembering what we already invented.
Yeah, right. Like the first experiments with quantum computing are happening within the last decade. They started happening, and it's like,
well, as soon as we enter that realm, we already completed the computer, and we just started the computer the same day, right? Because once we
exactly,
it's the beginning and the end at the same time.
Yeah, and we've also gone to actually how our cells communicate. We're, you know, just by doing that, we start to understand it. And I think that's why I said that that's what I feel like we are doing. Just like with technology, I think, like, for example, in history, there wasn't, the words for colors didn't start. We didn't have words for colors until we were able to use them in some kind of depiction, right? So, and that's why blue was one of the last words we had in language, was because it's very hard to find blue pigments in nature like that you can actually use in a drawing or painting. And so it's very similar in that, like, well, Richard Feynman talked about this idea that, like, if you can't make it, you can't understand it, right? So by making, we understand. And so we're making all these different forms of computation to understand our own consciousness. We're making quantum computing to understand that that's actually how cellular networks communicate, and potentially how solar systems communicate, you know, like, so they're all just basically, you know, back to the roots of the word of technology, techne, like weaving something so that you can have a reflection back to you as a way of understanding the universe itself, right?
Yeah. So how about a question to kind of end the night and kind of move us into the month is, are there any aspiring fields of technology that any of you guys are interested in that is exciting in where we're going, and would you like to kind of pay more attention to?
Indy, you there? You want to field that?
See cooking?
Can you ask that again, Charlie?
Yeah. Is there any current technology or industry in technology that you're excited about and very hopeful for to see the future of, that will really help us in our, you know, where we're at with heart-centered technology?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I spoke about earlier, you know, developing and developing, I think,
in terms of like you seeing like any, like, do you see already a lot of people getting into that space?
I see that, you know, when there is like these kind of revolutionary kind of these collective actions, they're a wonderful opportunity to curve it into strategy, right? And like, and so I think there is a wonderful opportunity right now for people's excitement to enact change that's going to be supportive to all beings. They might be more receptive to technology that will help amplify that. So.
Okay. Yeah, I really do hope, I really am with you on that, is a civic duty technology would be really great for us as millennials, because we will, oh my God, the legal crap, please someone help us with that legal crap. I've tried reading that stuff. It's worse than computer language, guys. I try reading what they want us to vote on. I mean, seriously, if it doesn't have pictures and that person's face, because I don't know who I'm looking at, like it's really difficult. So
I have over the years, I've gained friends who are lawyers who like explain it to me that work in like the social justice and different kind of arenas, volunteering their time. So when I get their perspective, it changes everything. So I'm like, how do we do that so more people have access to people like that? So that's kind of
Indy, I will actually say let's challenge ourselves because we are going to a pretty big election this year to see how we as Cosmic Labyrinth can get involved in that in a low tech way. I think we've got plenty already in our hands, but is there a way where we can do some kind of low tech way to maybe go over some of these things together as a group? Maybe we talk about some of these anything
maybe.
that we would want to talk about with voting, so I know like what are you guys dealing with in your city, in your state, because can we talk about some of these propositions together as a whole, because I read stuff by myself and I'm like help, or I'm just not gonna do it. It's harder than chemistry.
I also, the chemistry is easy, man, compared to that shit.
For you, but I'm just struggling.
I also think that like there's we could even do something with the kids, because I think they really it's really important for them to understand the system, but also it's interesting to see what happens when kids are given these perspectives, what we can learn from them, because they kind of show us a little bit more of the raw nature of politics, so.
Okay. I mean, just for ourselves, because I think that was, because I think for kids, it'd be a whole different conversation than, for us to be able to have a conversation just about, politics and civil. I don't know much, so I'd like to have the conversation. I know that I am not necessarily as involved as you are, and am very inspired by seeing you be so civic minded, but it's just like how I can tell you guys that astrology is awesome, but I'm not gonna like throw you into the here's your chart, go figure it out. Great for you.
Charlie, I would vote for you, bro.
Thank you. But I'm not saying voting for me. I just want to get involved. I think it's not that easy. Like you might be more comfortable with it, but some of us would love to kind of get some like presentation. Like I'd love to kind of see how to get more civically involved.
Makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think I mean, I think I'm excited about like what Indy mentioned, technology as a form of empathy building. That really excites me too. Like stepping into the shoes of people in very different life situations than you, and just like getting a little glimpse of that, and maybe by extension getting a glimpse of maybe what like the political processes for people, and like understanding how that could shift even, like imagining VR as a vehicle for that. I think is kind of a cool direction, like if it gives you the experience of what is it like to be a lawmaker, and how can you kind of imagine like changing that system once you understand kind of how it's functioning now from a like almost lived experience perspective, you know and at the same time, like one of the things that excites me a lot about technology is the ability to go into, I've mentioned this a lot already, but go into the consciousness of other life forms, and like just get really absorbed. And I think we've experienced this through psychedelics, right? This is a great way, of course, of doing it. But I think VR or other technologies can also get you there. Really go into the life of a plant. Go into the life of the mycelium. Go into the life of insects and animals, and by extension, of course, build empathy and understanding and relationships that will, hopefully ripple out into your life. Right? So.
Yeah, cool. For me, I'm really excited in the technological devices that's really starting to show proof of consciousness and the invisible realm. So there's Kirlian photography that allows us to capture our auric field. There's magnetic frequencies that allows us to see the magnetic waves in our body, to see kind of, and as we're talking about heart center, we're talking about spirit too, spirituality, and being able to recognize and find proof that there's a very strong electromagnetic frequencies of spiritual energy that is resonating off of us. Right now, I'm doing acupuncture. We use our body as our conduit to understand and feel the body sensation on the body to recognize what is wrong with somebody's system, right? And here we have inputs with like the Apple Watch that allows us to recognize your heartbeat. What if we could recognize your heartbeat, your anxiety, your auric field, and your emotions, and really kind of tell you, hey, are you freaking out right now? Are there steps that we can do to help you through this? And I feel like, finding the balance of finding that proof with tools that show without a doubt that we have this spiritual force that is actually governed by the heart space, that then really awakens our heart-centered ability, that the heart is that controller of the spiritual energy that is embodied in our physical being, so that our technology tools can really improve to include that spiritual heart space energy of ourselves. Because I think right now the tools have kept us from accepting that this space exists, right? But if we really are able to find that even an Apple Watch was able to tell you what your auric field was, it would change the conversation of spirituality, because then you can say, hey, your heart seems to be in distress. You should not be making decisions based on that, I imagine that like your body, Google did this for like drunk emailing. You can't, if you couldn't answer math questions at night because you might be drunk, they don't let you email. Like, right? We have drunk text messages where we're not supposed to text certain people we're angry at.
Speak for yourself, Charlie.
Right? That we might be texting people. And so it's just really interesting that, not that I want a computer AI to tell us what to do, but, it's really exciting that there are more tools now to really see the full breadth of who we are as spiritual beings on this planet. And I really hope that it bridges the gap of people recognizing this part of who we are, without, with more belief, because right now there's a lot of like, don't believe it because there's no proof of it, and so I feel like we're like a religion again, getting people to believe in something that, they need proof of as much as.
Funny. Charlie, I was literally going to say that off of what you're saying. I was going to say that what you're kind of saying is that the dogmatism of technology is kind of dissolving. So we can, because like if it was just scientists and just programmers, used to be just people who thought a certain way. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So it's I'm really hopeful with where we are going with that space for sure.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
dude, I love it. I think from all three of ours perspective is interesting, and I'm gonna look forward to like the rest of the month when we speak to some incredible inventors, incredible scientists, incredible engineers, artists, because some of the best engineers are artists, and vice versa. Some of the best artists are engineers. So it's gonna be fascinating conversations for the end of the month. And then in between all of that, we're gonna have our own, we're gonna be kind of tapping into heart-centered technology with the play shops we do with the kids, the different art and different play shops. I'm going to be doing a sacred geometry one in a couple of weeks, which is going to be fun, so all that stuff is like, we want to also bring curiosity to kids so that who knows what kind of technology they'll invent, and yeah, I mean, I think you guys, I think about my kids, the kids that we have in India, right? We have like almost 42 orphans, right, that we have that live at our ashram. But we also like work with kids around the neighborhood in Varanasi. And the kids who like live at the ashram, right, they meditate, they do yoga every day, they practice Sanskrit, right? They like also practice universality, like they meet all kinds of people. They learn that they can be infinite. There's like no like restriction on what they want to believe in, right? So I like sometimes think like, what if I teach these kids how to program, or the ones that want to, right? Like, what would they program? Because they're so open. Like they're like we're resolving their trauma. So they're like really open-hearted, really curious, really also very balanced and disciplined, right? So like, what can children in that spirit, what can they create? Like we haven't even tested that arena. You know, like think about it. Like what place in the world does that? Like what place gives the tools to the kid that goes, okay, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Here's technology. Whatever technology you want, do whatever you want. Go. Good luck. We'll help you. We'll help you create what you want. What do you want to do?
Yeah, that's definitely gonna be really important for the kids tomorrow, right? We're getting to a place now where we can give them technology that could allow them to build anything. I mean, 3D printers, maker studios are so amazing these days. Being able to create anything and have it printed, I mean, that's very amazing to see as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any parents listening to this, or you know any parents, that you can go to any I mean, not right now, but when libraries open back up, a lot of libraries have free maker studios. So, you know, kids can go learn. You know, if they don't have access, you know, if you don't have access to it, 3D printer, you can go learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, well, there's a great example of the kid who developed a device for opening doors during COVID, right? And it's a very simple little ergonomic thing you put on your hand, and you can use it to open up doors without touching the doorknob. Or and you can shift it in a different way, so you can open up like a car door or a doorknob, you know. And it's just a very simple, beautiful design. And the kids, I think like 12, 13 years old, you know. Yeah, it's very, very empowering to be able to print things out into the physical world. And I think, Indy, you really hit it though. It's like, how do we help nurture the innate like curiosity and creativity, and like help remove the trauma, so that the good stuff can come out, right? And just keep that going. That's really the goal right there, because all those technologies are waiting for that moment, in a way, you know, for those minds, for those hearts.
And I'm really worried that cats or dogs get that device. You know, like they're gonna be opening doors. They're gonna be like, you'll be like, where'd my dog go, dude?
Like, we don't need humans now. Check this out. Door opening paw device.
Yeah, not to mention goats, man.
Oh shit.
Goats don't need it. They just start climbing the walls, climbing.
Or monkeys, right? Monkeys, woo, man.
monkeys, dude. We have monkeys in India, man. Those guys, they don't need help. They already know how to get in and out of stuff, man. They're smart.
They think you're the monkeys. They look at us going, you guys are the monkeys.
They're like, look at these fools, man. Great session today, guys. I think we really planted a good seed. I think it's gonna be exciting to see where we go this next month with this, and also where we go personally right now, like with what's going on in the world. You know, how can we continue to be of service with technology?
Definitely, yeah. So it's awesome evening. Thank you very much, everyone. I will also be uploading. I did a 2-week forecast for astrology with a friend yesterday, so I'll be loading that up tonight.
Oh, that's awesome!
Yeah, because this week is gonna get crazy. We've got an eclipse tonight going on, and then the next couple of days we got some crazy aspects. So people might be feeling a little intense going on in the next couple of days. So hold on tight. World will still be here.
Okay, well, hold on. What do you want me to hold on to, my butt?
Hold on to Diana. Hold on to Diana. You guys are two working together.
Definitely. Definitely. I love you guys, Mick, Charlie.
Great. Thank you.
Everybody listening. Be well. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Be safe.
Be safe. Love you
Blessings.
all. Bye.
Ciao.